My brother took my fiancée, then tried to take my father's company. He forgot I was the one who knew where all the bodies were buried. My name is Ethan Vale. I'm 33 years old. And for most of my life, I was the kind of man people forgot to mention until something went wrong. Not because I was useless. Not because I was weak. But, because I was quiet. Quiet men are easy to underestimate. People mistake silence for emptiness. They think because you don't fight for the spotlight, you must not know where it is. They think because you don't interrupt, you have nothing to say. They think because you keep your hands steady, you don't feel the knife going in. My family made that mistake for years. My stepmother, Diane, made a religion out of it. My younger half-brother, Caleb, built an entire personality around it. And my father, Leonard Vale, watched it happen for longer than I like to admit. He wasn't cruel in the obvious way. He didn't shout. He didn't throw things. He didn't tell me I was worthless. That would have been easier, honestly. At least then I could have hated him cleanly. Instead, he did something quieter. He let everyone else decide my place. And my place was always second. Caleb was the golden one. Caleb had the smile people remembered. Caleb could walk into a room late and make people thank him for showing up. He was the kind of man who clapped you on the back too hard, laughed too loud, and called it charisma. When we were kids, he broke windows and called it confidence. I fixed them and got told not to be so sensitive. When we were teenagers, he crashed Dad's old Mercedes into a mailbox and somehow turned the story into a charming lesson about risk-taking. I got a B+ in chemistry and spent dinner listening to Diane ask whether I was losing focus. That was how things worked in our house. Caleb performed. I repaired. Caleb impressed. I endured. Caleb took. I adjusted. And everybody called it balance. For a long time, I believed them. Then Mara came along. Mara Blake was not the kind of woman I expected to fall in love with me. She was bright, restless, always carrying a notebook full of ideas she never seemed to finish. She worked in brand strategy, which meant she knew how to make ordinary things look necessary. Maybe that should have warned me. But, when she looked at me, I felt chosen in a way I hadn't felt before. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just seen. She liked that I listened. She liked that I noticed details. She liked that I remembered how she took her coffee, which authors she hated, and why she always stood near windows at parties. For 3 years, I thought we were building something. I had a ring hidden in the bottom drawer of my desk. White gold. Simple. Nothing flashy. I had booked a table at a little restaurant near the marina, the kind of place where the lights were low and no one rushed you out. I had rehearsed what I was going to say. Not a speech. Just the truth. That she had made my life feel less like a thing I was surviving and more like a place I could stay. Then Caleb found out. To this day, I don't know who told him. Maybe Diane. Maybe Mara mentioned the restaurant without thinking. Maybe Caleb just smelled happiness on me and decided he wanted to own it. That was always his talent. He didn't need something until someone else had it. 2 weeks before I planned to propose, Mara asked to meet me at a cafe 3 blocks from our apartment. I knew something was wrong the second I saw her. She had already cried. Her eyes were too bright. Her hands were folded too carefully around her cup. People about to hurt you often arrange themselves like they're trying to look harmless. She said my name softly. Ethan. Just that. And something inside me went still. She told me she was confused. She told me she loved me, but maybe not in the way she thought. She told me Caleb understood parts of her that I didn't. I remember staring at the little crack in the table between us. I remember the hiss of the espresso machine. I remember a woman laughing near the door like the world hadn't just changed shape. I asked her how long. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. 3 months later, she moved into Caleb's townhouse. 6 months later, they were engaged. Diane called me the night before their engagement party. You need to come, she said. No hello. No softness. Just an instruction. I was sitting alone in my apartment, eating noodles from the container because cooking for one had started to feel like an insult. I'm not going, I said. There was a pause. Then that sigh. Diane had a way of sighing that made you feel like your pain was creating extra paperwork for her. Ethan, this family has been through enough awkwardness. I almost laughed. Awkwardness. That was what she called it. Not betrayal. Not humiliation. Not my brother taking the woman I was going to marry. Awkwardness. Caleb is your brother, she continued. And Mara is going to be part of this family. You can't sulk forever. I'm not sulking. Then stop acting like the victim. There it was. The sentence that explained my entire childhood. If Caleb hurt someone, the injured person was dramatic. If Caleb lied, the truth-teller was jealous. If Caleb stole, the person stolen from needed to move on. I said goodnight and hung up. I didn't go to the party. I didn't go to the wedding either. Dad called once. Not to ask how I was. Not to say he understood. Just to tell me it would mean a lot to Diane if I could rise above it. I told him I had spent my whole life rising above things no one else had to carry. Then I ended the call. For almost 5 years, I became very good at disappearing. I stayed away from family dinners. I muted everyone on social media. I worked. That was what I knew how to do. Vail Harbor Freight was my father's company. He started it with 2 trucks, 1 warehouse, and an ability to make exhausted men believe tomorrow's shipment mattered. By the time I was 30, it had grown into a regional logistics company with ports, warehouses, rail contracts, and enough old money around it to attract people who used words like legacy when they meant control. Caleb had a title there. Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. It sounded impressive. It mostly meant he flew business class, shook hands, forgot names, and promised things operations had to clean up later. I had a smaller title. Director of Risk and Internal Controls. People's eyes glazed over when I said it. That was fine. Glazed eyes are useful. They let you see who stops paying attention. My job was to know where the company was weak. Bad vendor contracts. Outdated security permissions. Insurance gaps. Unusual payments. Shadow agreements. Unreported liabilities. If the company had a skeleton, eventually it crossed my desk. And Vail Harbor Freight had a lot of skeletons. At first, I thought they were normal. Every old family company has strange files. Every founder has handshake deals that should have been written down. Every executive thinks one special exception won't matter. But, over time, patterns emerged. Invoices approved by Caleb without backup. Consulting fees paid to companies that barely existed. Warehouse upgrades that cost twice what they should have. A cancelled port expansion that still somehow generated 6 months of advisory expenses. Whenever I raised concerns, Caleb smiled. Ethan worries because Ethan cares, he'd say in meetings. Everyone would chuckle. Even Dad. Especially Dad. And just like that, the concern became a personality trait instead of a warning. Diane once cornered me at a company holiday event near the ice sculpture. You need to stop undermining your brother, she said. I was holding a glass of ginger ale. Caleb was across the room, telling a story with his arm around Mara's waist. I'm not undermining him, I said. I'm documenting risk. You always hide behind words like that. And Caleb always hides behind charm. Her eyes hardened. You know, Mara chose him because he lives. You calculate. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, no. She chose him because he wanted something that was mine. Diane's mouth tightened. She chose the man who fought for her. That stayed with me for a long time. Not because it was true. Because, people like Diane believe taking is the same thing as fighting. I might have stayed in that quiet exile forever if my father hadn't gotten sick. Pancreatic cancer. By the time they found it, there was already a cruelty in the doctor's voice. He didn't say hopeless. Doctors rarely do. They say words like aggressive, advanced, limited options. They give you timelines that sound like weather forecasts. 6 months. Maybe 9. Dad lasted 7. In those last months, something changed between us. Not enough. Never enough. But, something. He started calling me into his office after hours. At first, it was business. He wanted reports. He wanted contract summaries. He wanted to know which accounts were most exposed if leadership changed. Then one night, about 2 months before he died, he asked me a question. Do you think Caleb can run this company? I was standing by the window, looking down at the loading yard where trucks moved under floodlights like slow animals. I didn't answer immediately. Dad watched me from behind his desk. He had lost weight. His suit hung strangely on him. For the first time in my life, he looked less like a mountain and more like a man who had been pretending not to age. No, I said. He closed his eyes. Not surprised. Just tired. Why? Because, he wants the title, not the responsibility. Dad nodded once. I expected him to defend Caleb. He didn't. Instead, he opened a drawer, took out a folder, and slid it across the desk. Then I need you to keep reading. Inside were copies of emails. Contracts. Old memos. Documents I had never been allowed to see. Some involved Caleb. Some involved Diane. Some involved a man named Victor Hales, who owned a private investment group that had been circling Vail Harbor Freight for years. At the bottom of the folder was a handwritten note from my father. If I run out of time, Ethan needs to know everything. I looked at him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. You knew? I asked. He swallowed. I suspected. For how long? Too long. He didn't say it. But, it sat there between us. Too long. That was the closest he came to an apology. I wish I could tell you I forgave him in that moment. I didn't. Forgiveness is not a door you open because someone is dying. Sometimes it is a house you rebuild after the fire. Sometimes the fire wins. Still, I took the folder. I read everything. And for the next 2 months, I spent my nights building a map of all the places Caleb had quietly bled the company. I found shell vendors connected to Caleb's college roommate. I found marketing retainers that led back to Mara's agency. I found consulting payments routed through a company Diane had registered under her maiden name. Nothing explosive alone. That was the trick. Each piece looked explainable. Messy, maybe. Poor judgment, maybe. But, together. Together, they looked like a family using a company as a private ATM while my father pretended not to see the withdrawals. Then Dad died on a Thursday morning. I got the call at 5:18 a.m. The sky outside my apartment was still dark. For a few seconds, I just sat on the edge of my bed with the phone in my hand, listening to Diane breathe on the other end. He's gone, she said. Then she started crying. I didn't. Not right away. Grief came later. At first, there was only silence. A clean, terrible silence. The funeral was held 6 days later. Gray sky. Cold wind. The kind of mourning that makes everyone look like they're attending the burial of the weather itself. I arrived early and sat near the back. Old habit. Back rows are safe. You can see everyone. You can leave without making a scene. I had not seen Mara in almost a year. I saw her before I saw Caleb. She stood near the front, wearing a black coat and a pearl pin I had bought her for her 28th birthday. That annoyed me more than it should have. Not because I wanted it back. Because, she had turned even my gifts into props for his life. Then Caleb walked in. Late, of course. Diane clung to his arm as if the cameras were already rolling. And Caleb looked exactly like a man who had spent more time choosing his suit than grieving his father. He saw me. Smiled. Walked down the aisle slowly, accepting murmured condolences like applause. When he reached my row, he leaned slightly toward me. Good of you to show, he whispered. I looked up at him. Good of you to rehearse. His smile froze. Only for a second. Then he laughed under his breath and moved on. That was the first time in years I saw him realize I might not be afraid of him anymore. The service was tasteful. That is what people say when a funeral is expensive and emotionally empty. A violin played. A pastor spoke about legacy. Caleb gave a speech. Of course he did. He talked about Dad teaching him courage. Vision. Boldness. He used the word stewardship twice. I stared at the back of his head and wondered how many invoices he had signed while practicing those lines. When the service ended, people gathered at the Vale house for the reception. I had grown up there, technically. But, it had never felt like home after Diane arrived. She redecorated everything when I was 14. My mother's old books disappeared. The hallway photos changed. There were suddenly more pictures of Caleb than of anyone else. In one family portrait, I was standing on the far left, half cut off by the frame. No one noticed for 6 years. I did. The reception smelled like coffee, raincoats, and expensive flowers. People drifted through the rooms, speaking in low voices and eating tiny sandwiches as if grief had made them delicate. Caleb worked the crowd. He was good at that. A hand on the shoulder. A private laugh. A lowered voice. He made everyone feel like they had shared something with him. Even if all they had shared was his performance. I was in the kitchen getting water when Diane found me. She closed the door behind her. That was how I knew she had not come to comfort me. You need to be careful today, she said. I looked at her. With what? With your attitude. My father died. And Caleb lost his father too. I almost smiled. There it was again. Even grief had assigned seating. Did you tell him the lawyer is coming today? I asked. Diane's face changed slightly. Of course. The will reading is family business. Then why warn me? Because. Caleb is under a lot of pressure, and you have a habit of making things harder than they need to be. I set the glass down. By telling the truth. By insisting your truth is the only one. I studied her for a moment. She looked older than I remembered. Not softer. Just older. Diane, I said, you've spent 20 years protecting him from consequences. Don't confuse that with love. Her lips parted. Then closed. You sound bitter. No, I said. I sound finished. I walked out before she could answer. The lawyer arrived at 4. His name was Mr. Bellamy. He had represented my father since before Caleb was born, and he looked like a man who had seen enough family greed to stop being surprised by it. Everyone gathered in the sitting room. Caleb sat near the fireplace. Mara beside him. Diane on the other side. I stood near the window. I didn't want a seat. Standing made it easier to breathe. Mr. Bellamy opened a leather folder. Leonard Vale updated his estate plan 6 weeks before his passing, he said. Diane's head snapped up. Caleb's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened around the arm of his chair. 6 weeks. That mattered. 6 weeks ago, Dad had already given me the folder. 6 weeks ago, he had already started looking at Caleb differently. Mr. Bellamy continued. The residence will pass to Diane Vale for her lifetime use, after which it will be placed into the Vale Family Preservation Trust. Diane exhaled. A small victory. Caleb relaxed a little. Then the lawyer turned the page. Personal effects are divided according to the attached schedule. A few small gifts. Watches. Books. An old fishing rod to one of Dad's cousins. A vintage compass to me. That almost broke me. Not because it was valuable. Because, when I was 10, Dad once told me a man should always know which way he was facing. I had thought he forgot. Maybe he had. Maybe the dying remember things the living bury. Then Mr. Bellamy reached the company section. Caleb leaned forward. There it was. The thing everyone had really come to hear. Leonard Vail's controlling interest in Vail Harbor Freight, including all voting rights attached to the founder's shares, will be transferred into a newly formed governance trust. Caleb smiled. Just a little. He thought he knew what came next. Mr. Bellamy adjusted his glasses. The trustee will be Ethan Vail. Silence. Not dramatic silence. Real silence. The kind that makes the heating vents sound loud. Caleb stood. No. Mr. Bellamy did not look up. The trustee will have full authority to appoint or remove executive leadership, authorize audits, approve major transactions, and protect the long-term interests of the company. No, Caleb repeated. That's not possible. Diane's face had gone pale. Mara stared at the carpet. I did not move. My own shock was a cold thing. I had known Dad wanted me to read the files. I had not known this. Mr. Bellamy continued. Caleb Vail will retain a non-voting beneficiary interest, conditional upon cooperation with the trust's compliance review. Caleb laughed. It came out wrong. Too sharp. Too empty. Compliance review. Mr. Bellamy finally looked at him. Yes. Diane stood. Leonard would never humiliate Caleb like this. The lawyer pulled a sealed envelope from the folder. There is a letter addressed to the family. Leonard requested it be read aloud before any questions. Caleb looked at me. His eyes were no longer charming. They were bright with panic. Mr. Bellamy opened the letter. My father's words entered the room in someone else's voice. To my family. I have spent too many years rewarding volume and ignoring substance. That is my failure. I confused Caleb's confidence for leadership. I confused Ethan's quietness for distance. I let Diane convince me that peace was more important than fairness. It was not peace. It was cowardice. Vail Harbor Freight was built by men and women who showed up before sunrise, solved problems without applause, and protected what others depended on. In the end, I trust the person who did that when no one was watching. That person is Ethan. Diane sat down slowly. Caleb looked like someone had slapped him in public. The lawyer continued. The trust also requires an independent forensic audit of all executive payments, vendor relationships, related party transactions, and historical contract losses from the past 7 years. Now Mara looked up. That was the first moment I saw fear in her face. Not regret. Fear. Caleb turned toward me. What did you do? I met his eyes. I listened. He took a step forward. Mara grabbed his sleeve. Caleb, she whispered. He shook her off. You poisoned him against me. No, I said. You did that. I just stopped cleaning up the spill. Diane snapped, this is your father's funeral. And this, I said, is his company's survival. Mr. Bellamy closed the folder. The audit begins immediately. That was when the room divided. You could feel it. Not visibly. No one moved. No one shouted. But something old cracked down the center. People who had smiled at Caleb all afternoon suddenly avoided his eyes. People who had treated me like furniture started looking at me like I had a name. I hated that part. More than I expected. Because, respect that arrives with paperwork does not feel like respect. It feels like proof of how conditional people have always been. The reception ended early. Nobody said that was why. But, everyone knew. By dusk, only a few family members remained. Diane disappeared upstairs. Caleb went to Dad's study and slammed the door. Mara found me on the back porch. Rain tapped softly on the awning. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. She looked different than I remembered. Still beautiful. But, tired in a way makeup could not hide. "Did you know?" she asked. "No." "About the trust?" "No." She nodded. Her hand tightened around the railing. "Caleb thinks you planned this. Caleb thinks every consequence is a conspiracy." That hurt her. I saw it land. Good. Not because I wanted to hurt her. Because, truth should land somewhere. She looked at me. I never meant for things to happen the way they did. I almost laughed, but I didn't. That sentence is a coward's blanket. People wrap themselves in it when they want comfort without confession. "Mara," I said, "you moved into his townhouse 3 months after leaving me." Her eyes shone. "I know. You wore the pin I gave you today." She touched it instinctively. Then her face changed. "I didn't think." "No," I said. "You didn't." She looked down. "I'm sorry. I had imagined that apology for years. I thought it would unlock something. Peace. Anger. A final speech. Instead, it felt small. Too late to hate. Too late to want. Too late to matter." "I believe you," I said. "But I don't need it anymore." She nodded like that hurt worse than anger would have. Then the study door opened behind us. Caleb stepped out onto the porch. He had a drink in his hand. Of course he did. "Well," he said, smiling without warmth. "Isn't this cozy?" Mara moved away from me. Caleb noticed. His jaw twitched. "You must feel tall today," he said to me. "No. Come on. Don't do the humble act. You got what you wanted." What did I want? To be me. That was so absurd I actually smiled. And that made him angrier. "You think Dad chose you because you're better," he said. "He chose you because you made him feel guilty." "No," I said. "He chose me because you made him afraid." His face changed. There it was. The nerve. I had found it. For 1 second, Caleb looked less like a golden sun and more like a boy who had been handed a crown too heavy for his head. Then the mask returned. "You don't know anything about running a company." "I know enough to read invoices." Mara went still. Caleb's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means the audit will be thorough." He stepped closer. "You really want to go to war with me?" "No," I said. "That's the difference between us." He laughed. But, he was breathing harder now. I walked past him toward the house. At the door, I stopped. "I don't want war. I want records." For 3 days after the funeral, Caleb went quiet. That scared me more than his anger. Caleb loud was easy. Caleb quiet meant he was calling people. Threatening people. Promising things. Destroying documents. Or trying to. But, he had forgotten one very important thing. For 7 years, I had been the person responsible for internal controls. Not the CEO. Not the face of the company. Not the golden boy. The lock. And when people ignore the lock long enough, they forget it knows who has been turning the keys. The first thing I did was freeze all legacy access. The second thing I did was copy every vendor file tied to Caleb, Diane, Mara's agency, and Victor Hale's. The third thing I did was call Vivian. Vivian Cross was my wife. We had been married quietly 18 months earlier at a courthouse in Portland with 2 witnesses and no family. Not because I was ashamed. Because, peace had become precious to me. Vivian was a restructuring attorney. Not glamorous. Not loud. Not the kind of woman who turned rooms into stages. She was sharper than that. Vivian had a way of listening that made liars over-explain. When I told her what happened, she didn't gasp. She didn't say she was sorry. She opened her laptop. "Send me the trust documents," she said. That was Vivian. Love, in her language, looked like preparation. By midnight, she had built a legal risk map across 3 screens. Potential fraud. Breach of fiduciary duty. Self-dealing. Improper related party transactions. Unauthorized data exposure. Possible coercion of founder-level signatory authority. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "How much do you want to burn?" I sat across from her at the dining table. The city lights behind her made the windows look black. "I don't want to burn anything." "Good," she said. "Burning is emotional. Containment is strategic." That became the plan. Containment. We would not accuse without proof. We would not chase Caleb's tantrums. We would not give Diane a story about jealous Ethan destroying the family. We would gather. Quietly. Precisely. Completely. The audit firm arrived the next week. Caleb tried to block access to his files. He claimed attorney-client privilege over documents that had nothing to do with attorneys. He claimed personal privacy over company accounts. He claimed the audit was harassment. Every objection told us where to look. The first real break came from a woman named Naomi Price. She had worked in accounts payable for 9 years before leaving suddenly the previous winter. The official reason was burnout. The real reason, she told me, was Caleb. We met in a diner 20 minutes outside the city. She chose the booth facing the exit. That told me enough. Naomi was in her 40s, with tired eyes and the kind of posture people develop when they have spent too long being careful. She slid a flash drive across the table. "I kept copies because I knew one day someone would ask," she said. "What's on it?" "Payment requests. Email chains. A few voice notes." My stomach tightened. Voice notes? She looked away. Caleb liked to call instead of write when he knew something was wrong. Smart enough to avoid email. Arrogant enough to leave voicemail. That was Caleb. "Why give this to me now?" I asked. Naomi wrapped both hands around her coffee. "Because, your father came to see me." I froze. "When?" "About a month before he died." I could not speak for a second. She continued. "He apologized. Said he should have listened earlier. Asked whether I would be willing to help if you ever reached out." The diner noise faded. Forks. Mugs. A bell over the door. All of it moved far away. Dad had known. Not everything. But, enough. And instead of saying it to me directly, he had left another breadcrumb. Another apology hidden inside someone else's courage. I thanked Naomi. She shook her head. "Don't thank me yet. There's something else." She pulled a folded paper from her bag. A bank transfer summary. Victor Hale's investment group had paid a consulting company tied to Diane. The date made my skin go cold. 3 days before Caleb convinced Dad to cancel the port expansion. That cancellation had cost Vail Harbor Freight one of the most important opportunities in its history. At the time, Caleb said the expansion was too risky. Victor Hales bought the neighboring land 6 months later. He made millions. And Diane's hidden company got paid. Now it was no longer just Caleb being sloppy. It was coordinated. The second break came from Mara. Not because she wanted to help me. Because, she wanted to save herself. She called Vivian first. That told me she was scared. Vivian put the call on speaker with my permission. Mara's voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "I didn't know what the payments were for at first," she said. Vivian's tone stayed calm. "What payments?" "My agency. Caleb routed consulting fees through us. He said it was branding strategy. Did you perform services? A long pause. Some. Not enough to justify the invoices. How much? Another pause. About 400,000 over 3 years. I closed my eyes. Vivian looked at me, expression unreadable. Do you have documentation? She asked. Yes. Why are you coming forward now? Mara's breath trembled. Because. Caleb told me to delete everything. There it was. Vivian leaned closer to the phone. Did you? No. Good. Don't touch anything else. Mara whispered, am I going to prison? Vivian looked at me. I said nothing. This conversation is not legal advice, Vivian said. But, cooperation matters. Mara started crying quietly. I did not feel satisfaction. That surprised me. For years, I thought her downfall would feel like justice. Instead, it felt like watching someone wake up in the house she helped set on fire. She had not built the match. But, she had admired the flame. The third break came from Caleb himself. He sent me an email at 2:13 a.m. Subject line, last chance. It was long. Rambling. Angry. He accused me of manipulating Dad. Turning Vivian against the family. Humiliating Diane. Poisoning Mara. He said I was using the audit to compensate for personal failures. He said I had always been jealous. Then, near the end, he made the mistake that changed everything. He wrote, if you keep digging into Victor, you'll regret it. Some deals were above your pay grade then, and they still are now. I read that sentence 5 times. Then I forwarded it to Vivian. She called immediately. He just connected himself to Victor in writing, she said. I know. Do not respond. I wasn't going to. She paused. Then softer, are you okay? That question did what the threats didn't. It cracked something. I looked around my office. The audit files. The old compass on my desk. The rain sliding down the glass. Was I okay? My father was dead. My brother had taken my fiancée, tried to hollow out the company, and was now threatening me for discovering it. My stepmother had chosen her version of family over the truth every time. And somehow, I was the one expected to stay calm so everyone else could remain comfortable. No, I said. Vivian was quiet. Then she said, you don't have to be okay to be steady. I held on to that. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. Not a regular meeting. A special session. Attendance mandatory. Legal counsel present. Audit firm present. Trust authority recognized. Caleb arrived 7 minutes late. Diane came with him. That was a mistake. She wore navy and pearls and the expression of a woman prepared to be offended professionally. Mara did not come. I noticed Caleb noticed. His face tightened when he saw the empty chair. Vivian sat to my right. Mr. Bellamy to my left. Naomi Price joined by video from a separate room. The audit lead began. No drama. No raised voice. Just slides. Dates. Payments. Vendors. Approvals. Shell entities. Routing patterns. Each slide removed another layer of Caleb's costume. At first, he leaned back like he was bored. Then he crossed his arms. Then he started interrupting. By the time the slide showed Diane's hidden company, she stood. This is disgusting, she said. Vivian looked at her. I agree. Diane blinked. Vivian continued, the misuse of founder trust, company funds, and family influence is disgusting. Caleb slammed his hand on the table. Don't talk to my mother like that. I spoke for the first time. Sit down. He looked at me, stunned. Maybe because I had not raised my voice. Maybe because everyone in the room expected him to obey. He didn't sit. So I opened the folder in front of me. Caleb Vale will be removed from all executive functions effective immediately. He laughed. You don't have the authority. Mr. Bellamy slid the trust document forward. He does. I continued. Your beneficiary interest is suspended pending civil recovery. Diane gasped. Ethan. I didn't look at her. Vale Harbor Freight will seek repayment of misappropriated funds, damages from the lost port expansion, and any related recovery attached to Victor Hale's investment group. Caleb's face went red. You're insane. No, I said. I'm late. That landed harder than I expected. Because, it was true. I should have done this years ago. My father should have done it before me. Naomi should not have had to hide flash drives. Mara should not have been used as a financial tunnel. Employees should not have paid for Caleb's need to appear important. I looked at the board. For years, this company confused charm with leadership. That ends today. No one spoke. Then the oldest board member, a woman named Patricia Rowe, nodded. I support the trustees' recommendation. One by one, the others followed. Caleb stared around the room as if waiting for someone to save him. No one did. For the first time in his life, the room did not bend. Diane started crying. Not softly. Not with grief. With outrage. You're destroying this family, she said. I looked at her then. Really looked at her. The woman who had rewritten my childhood. The woman who turned my hurt into inconvenience. The woman who protected Caleb so completely that she never noticed she was helping him rot. No, I said. I'm refusing to keep paying for the illusion of one. Caleb moved toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back. You think this makes you powerful? I shook my head. No. It makes me responsible. That's why you never wanted it. He left. Diane followed. For a moment, the room stayed still. Then the audit lead resumed discussing next steps. That almost made me laugh. Life is strange that way. A family can collapse, and someone still has to explain filing deadlines. The fallout was not instant. Real consequences rarely are. They arrive like weather. Pressure first. Then rain. Then flood. Victor Hale's group denied everything until Mara turned over her files. That changed their tone. Diane claimed she had no idea what her company was being used for until bank records showed she had signed the account formation documents herself. Caleb hired a loud attorney. Then a better one. Then a quieter one. By the end of the month, he stopped giving interviews. By the end of the second month, he resigned from 3 nonprofit boards that had once loved putting his face on event flyers. By the third, he sold his townhouse. Mara left him before the civil settlement was finalized. She sent me one letter. Not an email. A letter. Handwritten. Careful. She said she was sorry. Not just for leaving. For choosing the easier story. That phrase stayed with me. The easier story. Caleb had offered her a version of life where everything sparkled. I had offered quiet. Quiet does not look impressive in photos. Quiet does not win rooms. Quiet does not feel like a movie until you're old enough to understand that peace is rarer than excitement. I did not respond. Not because I hated her. Because, silence, finally, belonged to me. 6 months after Dad's funeral, Vale Harbor Freight announced the revival of the port expansion. Not under Victor Hales. Not under Caleb. Under a new partnership with employee ownership incentives, tighter vendor controls, and public reporting standards that made half the old guard uncomfortable. Good. Comfort had hidden too much. At the announcement, reporters asked me whether the company was trying to distance itself from the scandal. I said no. That surprised them. Then I said, we're not distancing ourselves from the scandal. We're learning from it in public. That quote ran everywhere. Caleb hated it. I know because he posted one last message online. Some people pretend to be moral after stealing everything. He deleted it within an hour. Screenshots live forever. Vivian saw it before I did. She handed me her phone across the breakfast table. I read it. Then handed it back. No response, she asked. No. She smiled faintly. You've gotten very good at that. I had practice. Later that day, I drove to the cemetery. I had not visited Dad's grave since the burial. The grass had settled. The stone was simple. Leonard James Vale. Founder. Father. No mention of the mess he left behind. No mention of the things he fixed too late. I stood there with my hands in my coat pockets, the old compass in one palm. I don't know what you wanted from me, I said. The wind moved through the trees. No answer. Of course. Dead men leave documents, not explanations. I'm angry, I continued. I think I'll be angry for a long time. Still nothing. But I understand the company now. Not as your monument. As a responsibility. That was the closest I came to forgiveness. Maybe that was enough. As I turned to leave, I saw Diane near the cemetery gate. She looked smaller without Caleb beside her. For a moment, I considered walking past. Then she said my name. Ethan. I stopped. She approached slowly. No pearls today. No performance. Just a tired woman in a gray coat. I didn't know how far it went, she said. I looked at her. With Caleb? With all of it. I waited. The old Ethan would have helped her. Filled the silence. Made it easier. I didn't. She swallowed. I loved him too much. No, I said quietly. You protected him too much. Those aren't the same. Her eyes filled. Do you hate me? I thought about lying. Then decided I was done making pain easier for people who created it. Some days. She nodded like she deserved that. Maybe she did. I'm sorry, she whispered. It was the first real apology she had ever given me. No defense. No comparison. No mention of Caleb suffering more. Just sorry. I wanted it to heal everything. It didn't. But something loosened. A knot, maybe. A small one. I'm not ready, I said. She wiped her cheek. I know. I walked away. That was not forgiveness. But it was the first conversation we'd ever had where she didn't ask me to disappear inside someone else's comfort. A year passed. Vale Harbor freight changed. Slowly. Then suddenly. The port expansion broke ground in spring. Employee turnover dropped. Insurance costs fell after we cleaned up compliance issues. The digital routing platform we launched cut delays across 3 terminals. People started calling me a reformer. That word made me uncomfortable. I was not trying to become a symbol. I was trying to keep trucks moving without lies attached to the wheels. Vivian said that was exactly why it worked. You don't crave the throne, she told me one evening as we watched the harbor lights from our balcony. You make it sound medieval. It is. Family companies always are. I laughed. She leaned against the railing beside me. Below us, cranes moved against the dark like patient giants. For the first time in my life, I understood something simple. I had spent years wanting my family to see me. Not admire me. Not praise me. Just see me. But, being seen by people committed to misunderstanding you is a trap. They don't need more evidence. They need a version of you that keeps their world intact. Caleb needed me small. Diane needed me bitter. Mara needed me safe enough to leave. Dad needed me quiet until he needed me strong. And me? I needed to stop auditioning for people who had already assigned my role. The final message from Caleb came 13 months after the funeral. A short email. No subject. You ruined my life. I looked at it for a long time. Then I typed one sentence. No, Caleb. I stopped funding it. I didn't send it. I deleted the draft. Then I archived his email. That felt better. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Better. A few weeks later, I heard Caleb had moved south and taken a sales job under a different last name. Mara started her own small agency and, according to someone who thought I wanted updates, built it honestly this time. Diane sent cards on holidays. I didn't always answer. But, sometimes I did. Short notes. Neutral. Careful. That was what rebuilding looked like for me. Not hugs. Not tearful dinners. Not pretending the past had been a misunderstanding. Just boundaries strong enough that kindness could exist without swallowing me whole. On the second anniversary of Dad's death, the port facility opened. We named it the Naomi Price Terminal. Not after Dad. Not after me. After the woman who kept the proof when everyone else kept quiet. At the ribbon cutting, Naomi cried. So did half the accounts payable department. That meant more to me than any article ever could. After the ceremony, I stood alone near the edge of the dock. The air smelled like salt, diesel, and rain. A ship horn sounded somewhere beyond the harbor. Vivian came up beside me. You okay? She asked. I looked at the terminal. The workers. The cranes. The company that had almost been gutted by people who thought inheritance meant entitlement. Then I looked at her. Yeah, I said. I think I am. She smiled. No grand speech. No applause. Just quiet. The kind I used to think made me invisible. The kind I now knew had been protecting the strongest parts of me all along. For years, my brother thought winning meant taking what belonged to someone else. My stepmother thought love meant shielding him from every consequence. My father thought silence could keep a family together. And me? I learned that silence is only weakness when fear is holding it. When truth is holding it, silence becomes patience. And patience, sharpened long enough, becomes power. Some men spend their whole lives chasing the spotlight. I became the man who owned the switch. My sister Emily told me I wasn't immediate family anymore at her own wedding. Then she had the wedding planner point me to a folding table in the hallway, outside the ballroom, next to the coat rack, close enough to hear the music but not see the stage. I almost walked away quietly. That was my first instinct, the one I'd spent 28 years training into myself. Don't make it worse. Don't make it about you. It's her day. But, then her new mother-in-law looked at me, really looked at me, the way you look at something that doesn't belong, and said, weddings are complicated. Only the most important people get the best seats. That was when I remembered something. Emily had spent months telling me exactly what she thought of that woman. Every phone call, every venting session, every, oh my God, she did it again, text at 11 at night. I have a very good memory. Let me tell you about growing up as Emily's sibling. I'm Alex. I'm 28. Emily is 25, and from the time she was old enough to understand that being the youngest had advantages, she used every single one of them. If I got a B, I was wasting my potential. If Emily got a C, my mom bought a cake because at least she tried. If I forgot to call home on a Sunday, I was pulling away from the family. If Emily missed 3 months of calls, she was going through something and needed space. My dad isn't a bad man. He's just the kind of person who figures the path of least resistance is kindness, which in our house meant letting my mother and Emily run things while he read the paper in the other room. He loves me, I know that. He just never loved me louder than my mother loved Emily. I moved out at 22, 4 hours away, for a job I didn't tell them about until I'd already signed the lease. That decision became a recurring item in every argument. Alex chose to leave. Alex doesn't make us a priority. Alex acts like she's too good for this family. I kept coming back, though. Every holiday, every birthday, every graduation, everything that required a card and a present and a smile at the dinner table. Which is maybe why it took me so long to see it clearly. When Emily got engaged, I found out through Instagram. A photo of the ring, her hand, the restaurant. Posted on a Wednesday afternoon. I texted her congratulations within an hour. She replied with a heart emoji 2 days later. I told myself it was fine. She was excited. There were a lot of people to tell. The months that followed had a pattern I tried not to name. The bridesmaids were announced, 4 of them, all friends, no family, and I wasn't in the group chat. The venue decision, the caterer, the florist, I heard about all of these after the fact, from my mother, in the specific way my mother delivers news she knows is awkward. Quick, followed by a subject change. I wasn't asked about any of it. I wasn't given a role. I was invited, which is something. I told myself, it's her wedding. Not everything has to be about me. I bought a gift. A good one, something I knew she actually wanted, something I'd been paying attention to, something that took time to find. I wrapped it myself. I showed up on the day in a dress that felt right for the occasion, because even then, even knowing what I knew somewhere underneath all the rationalizing, I wanted to do it right. The venue was beautiful. I'll give Emily that. She knows how to build a room. Chandeliers dripping with crystal, white flowers everywhere, soft music from somewhere I couldn't see. The kind of place where everything looks like it was made to be photographed. I went to the seating chart near the entrance. Long boards, alphabetical, everyone's name matched to a table number. I didn't find mine. I looked twice. Spelled my name different ways in my head, maybe a typo, maybe they'd filed it under something else. The wedding planner materialized next to me. She was holding a clipboard and had the expression of someone who has been handed a problem and told to solve it quietly. I can't find my name, I said. Right, she said. So, you're actually just outside. Outside the seating chart. Outside the ballroom. She pointed past the entrance, toward the hallway. There was a table. Not a round ballroom table with linen and crystal and a centerpiece. A rectangular table, the kind that folds up and fits in a closet. A cheap white cloth over it. 2 chairs. It was positioned next to a row of coat hooks, some already filling up, beside the door to the main hall. From where I stood, I could hear music. I could not see anything. I stood there for a moment. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because, my brain genuinely refused to accept that someone had done this on purpose. There had to be a mistake. Some cascade of miscommunications that had landed me here by accident. People don't put their siblings next to the coat rack. That's not a thing people do. I went to find Emily. She was in the bridal suite with my mother and 4 bridesmaids, all of them orbiting her in the specific configuration of people who have collectively decided one person is the center of gravity. Emily had her hair done, her dress on, a glass of something sparkling in one hand. She looked perfect. She looked annoyed when she saw me. Why am I sitting in the hallway? I asked. She tilted her head slightly. Arranged her face into something like confusion. Oh, we had to move some things around. Seating got complicated. Complicated how? Everyone else is inside. Alex. My mother stepped forward, voice already in dull-to-blade mode. Not now. It's Emily's special day. I know it's her special day. I want to understand why I'm next to the coat rack on her special day. Emily sighed, not an upset sigh, more like an inconvenienced one, like I was a minor problem she'd hoped would sort itself out. You're not really immediate family anymore, she said. The room didn't react. The bridesmaids looked at their phones, their shoes, the middle distance. I'm your sister, I said. You live 4 hours away. You haven't been around in years. The family dynamic is different now. Ryan's family is here, his parents, his siblings, and I needed to prioritize, I repeated. Don't make this into something. I'm getting married today. I looked at her. I looked at my mother, who was looking at the carpet. I thought about the gift sitting by the coat rack. I thought about the Instagram post with the ring. Okay, I said. And I walked back out. I sat down at the table in the hallway. I had been there maybe 7 minutes when Emily's new mother-in-law came through the entrance. Her name was Diane. She was well dressed, loud in the way of someone who has decided she deserves the room's attention, and she stopped when she saw me. She looked at the table. She looked at me. "Oh," she said. "You're the hallway seat." "That's me." She smiled the kind of smile that has nothing warm in it. "Weddings are complicated," she said. "Only the most important people get the best seats." She disappeared into the ballroom. I sat with that for a moment. Then something in me, the part that had been very quiet for a very long time, woke up. Here's what I knew about Diane. I knew it because Emily had told me. Over months of phone calls, texts, screenshots. Emily had a lot to say about Diane. She thought Diane was self-centered and couldn't go 5 minutes without making someone else's moment about herself. She was terrified of Diane's speech because, in Emily's words, she will absolutely cry on purpose and make it about her losing a son. She'd told me, more than once, that she was dreading having Diane at the head table because she'd ruin the photos with her face. Emily had also said, and this was the one I remembered most clearly, that she was being so nice to her until the wedding is over and then I'm done pretending. I had heard all of this. I had responded sympathetically. I had been a good sister to her through all of it, the way you are when someone calls you to vent and you listen and you're on their side. I found Diane near the ballroom entrance about 10 minutes later. "I was thinking about what you said," I told her. "About the important people and the best seats." She gave me a gracious nod. "The kind you give to someone you've already classified." Emily was actually very stressed about the seating too, I said. She was really worried about certain people being too close to the head table. Something shifted in Diane's expression. "What does that mean?" She mentioned not wanting anyone who might take attention away from her near the front. She was very specific about it. Diane's gracious look was gone now. "And the speech," I said. She was nervous about the speeches. Something about wanting them to stay focused on her and Ryan. She said that. She also, and look, I'm probably not supposed to say this, she mentioned that she'd been putting in a lot of effort with certain people. Keeping things smooth. She said it was just until the wedding was over. The silence that followed was the kind that has weight to it. "What exactly did she say?" Diane asked. "She said she was being so nice until the wedding is over and then she's done pretending." Diane looked at me for a long moment. Then she turned and walked, very purposefully, toward the bridal suite. I stayed where I was. It didn't take long. I heard the voices first, through the hallway, muffled but unmistakable. Then Emily appeared, already moving fast, with the expression of someone whose carefully arranged world has just gone sideways. Diane was behind her, no longer gracious. Ryan, Emily's new husband, was 20 seconds behind them both, looking confused in the specific way grooms look when something is wrong and nobody will explain it to them clearly. "Alex." Emily's voice was steady with the effort it took to keep it that way. "What did you say to her?" "I was just making conversation," I said. "Is that true?" Diane asked Emily, loudly enough for the 2 bridesmaids who had followed out of curiosity to hear. "Were you pretending to like me?" "It's completely out of context, that's what people say," I said, when the context makes them look worse. Ryan said, "Can someone tell me what's happening?" Emily turned to him and started to explain, or rather, to spin, which is not the same thing, and Ryan looked like he understood the difference. My mother appeared, white-faced, and took my arm. "This is not the time for this." "It became the time," I said, "when you put me next to the coat rack and told me I wasn't family." She didn't have an answer for that. Around us, the noise was spreading. The music inside had stopped, or been paused, I couldn't tell which. Guests near the doorway were watching with the careful attention of people who want to see what's happening but don't want to be seen watching. A bridesmaid was on her phone. Emily looked at me across the small distance of the hallway. "How could you do this?" she said. "Not a question. An accusation. I didn't make up anything you said. On my wedding day, yeah." I bent down and picked up the gift bag I'd left beside the coat hooks. "About that. What are you doing? Taking this back?" I straightened up. "I brought it as your sister. You made it pretty clear that person wasn't invited. Are you seriously? Enjoy your perfect wedding, Emily." And I walked out. The drive home was very quiet. I kept waiting for something to hit me: guilt, adrenaline, the sick feeling you get after you've done something you can't take back. But, the longer I drove, the less I felt any of those things. What I felt was tired and, underneath the tired, something cleaner. The phone started around midnight. "My mother, *, I can't believe you did that to your sister. This was the most important day of her life. * Emily, in a voice message, I hate you. I hope you know that. My marriage is falling apart because of you." 3 texts from bridesmaids I barely knew, all variations of the same thing. I read them, set the phone face down, and went to bed. My father called the next morning. I answered because I almost never don't answer my father. "I saw what happened," he said. "It wasn't right. I waited. I should have, before the wedding, when I saw the seating chart, I should have said something. I didn't." He paused. "I've been not saying things for a long time. What happened after I left?" He told me. Diane had confronted Emily in front of several of Ryan's relatives about the pretending comment. Ryan had gone quiet in a way that apparently scared Emily. My mother had tried to smooth it over and made things worse in the process. Diane had said, at some point in the evening, that she now understood where Emily's behavior came from, and she'd said it while looking directly at my mother. "Emily wants you to apologize," my father said. "She thinks it would help with Ryan's family." "I know she does." A pause. "I don't think you should," he said. "Emily still blames me. My mother thinks I ruined the wedding. She's been very consistent about this. And maybe I did ruin it, the version of it they designed. The one where everything looked perfect and nothing difficult was ever said out loud, and the sister who drove 4 hours was grateful just to be in the building, even if the building meant the hallway. But I didn't create any of it. The things Emily said about Diane," she said. "The gift was for a sibling who was wanted there. The decision to put me outside the room was made deliberately, by people who assumed I would absorb it quietly and stand up straight and smile during the photos. They assumed right about a lot of years. They were wrong about that night. My father and I talk more now. Carefully, tentatively, the way you talk when you're learning something about each other after a long time of not really looking. It's not everything. It's something. As for Emily, I don't know. I think I loved her the way you love someone you grew up with, which is a love made partly of proximity and habit and a shared experience of a particular house and a particular mother. Whether there's anything under that, I haven't found yet. What I know is this: for years I was the extra chair. The person expected to be grateful for being included, even when being included meant the hallway. The one who brought gifts to rooms she wasn't allowed into. That night, they told me I wasn't family anymore. So I acted like it. And I've never, not once, felt bad about that.